It is 11:30, so we can get started. This next presentation comes from Keller Associates, which is one of our sponsors this year. So we're very excited to have you guys involved in multiple ways here. Don Carnahan and Nathan Cleaver will be presenting this presentation to us about ways that we can secure grant money for transportation projects. And I think this will be a great and valuable conversation. So with that, I will hand it off to you guys.
So my name is Nathan Cleaver. I'm a principal here at Keller Associates over the transportation group. Pedestrian and walking facilities are near and dear to me. So right now at Keller Associates, we are doing a 2021 mile challenge for 2021. So every day I'm always watching my watch to see how many steps I've gotten. But 2021 miles is 5.54 miles a day. And for my particular step, it's 11,800 steps. And to get that day in and day out is extremely hard. And I just did the math. I'm at 1,564 miles for the year. I'm averaging about 5.5 miles. I am off pace by 14.9 miles. So I'm behind 14.9 miles. And it's all because I went to the Boise State BYU game this weekend and I had 3 days where I didn't do a bunch of walking, but it was worth it. So near and dear, walking a lot of pathways near my home. I live out in Nampa, anywhere from the Nampa Greenbelt system along the rivers or along the drains, or around the lake, or around the community parks. And so like to say I'm an avid walker. Also, being a professional engineer, I've designed multiple pedestrian facilities. So if there's any vandals here, I'm a converted vandal. Have done a bunch of work for University of Idaho for pedestrian safety on Perimeter Drive that goes into their soccer stadium, on Paradise Pathway, which follows Paradise Creek. Or if you know Hello Walk and Hello Steps, those are all my projects. And then down here at Boise State, was a part of the Cesar Chavez pathway back in the late 2000s that expanded the green belt next to the university, and then reconstructed Friendship Bridge that goes between the park and the university. So I'm excited to be here. It's a great organization, and we're glad to be sponsors. And Don, a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, Don Carnahan here. Nice to meet all of you virtually. I've got over 30 years experience in the transportation engineering world and arena. And I am, I won't say if I'm avid or not, but I'm a good pathway user. I try to get out for 3 walks again for the challenge. In order for me to get my steps, it takes me a walk in the morning with my daughter usually, then one at work, and then usually another evening one. And if I miss those, I fall behind. My average is not quite as good as Nathan's, but there's still hope. Also, with Keller Associates, we've done tons of projects, and as you see on the slide here, this is one of my favorite projects we completed just a few years ago. It's the missing link from basically Joe's Crab Shack Main Street to Ann Morrison Park. So it's nice to get this link done. It provides more connectivity, provides for better routes for fun runs and walks, because you can kind of do a loop now where you couldn't before. And it's just was a fun project, and it just gets used a lot. And it's great. So some of these walk bike projects have been some of my favorites. We also did a rails to trails from about a 3-mile pathway from Sugar City to Rexburg a few years ago. And contrary to popular belief, you can get an easement from the railroad to build a pathway. We did that successfully. It's not very easy, but it can be done. So that was a nice connectivity there also, and we got it done. Also, some great projects. You guys are, I'm sure, familiar with the Friends of the Weasel River Trail. We've done several projects on that segment, both on Cambridge and Council and Weezer and some other ones. That's just a fun piece there. That's also rails to trails connectivity. So yeah, I'm also excited to partner with Idaho Walk Bike Alliance, and I think what they do is great, and we're happy to help out any way we can. So with that, we can get started.
Oop, there we go.
Well, I'll just jump in then. You folks are maybe even more familiar with what's money that's out there and available. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, but it's the ones that we feel that are ones that are most popular and used the most. So rather than scattergun it, we've kind of picked these three projects: the Transportation Alternatives Program, the Children Pedestrian Safety Program, and then the Idaho Parks and Rec programs there. For the TAP programs, they're typically run about $500,000 limit. I think they've got about $3.5 million total. That could change. That there's some hope that there'll be some additional funding that could go up even higher. Eligible projects are for construction and planning of on and off road facilities, construction and planning of infrastructure related projects, safe routes for that, and you can also use it for conversion of the railroad corridors, the rails to trails also, and you can also do pedestrian bridges and underpasses, pathways, etc., things like that. One thing that this one does require is you do need a resolution from either your city or your highway district or your county folks to get that in. Sometimes that'll take a little while. It does have a 7.34% match. You can do 2 applications if you do the smaller ones, or you can do one application for up to the $1 million project if you want to do that. There is no in-kind match allowed, and they won't pay or allow any right-of-way to be part of the project. So you need to have your right-of-way in place before you apply for this project. And
So,
then,
do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go for it.
The Children Pedestrian Safety Program. This is from the state legislature. This is surplus eliminator money. So this is direct funding from the state. It's not federal, which is a little bit different than the TAP. The advantages with this one is, primarily it's for pathways and sidewalks along roadways, connecting sidewalks and ADA facilities, and then the HAWKs, or the high intensity, oh, Don, you're going to help me out. High intensity activated crosswalks. It doesn't even say HAWKs, but that's what we call it. It doesn't even spell it. Or the RRFBs, so the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So we see those a lot around Treasure Valley. We see those more being placed in throughout the valley. In fact, all over the state. And similar to the TAP, you can't have right-of-way needs on this. You essentially have to have all your right-of-way, and you got to make sure it has no federal nexus. And so what I mean by that is, if you have a wetland or something that requires a permit from a federal agency adjacent to it that you're going to impact, and you know that's part of your project, you're not going to have clearance in time to meet the 90-day window from award to when the project's bid ready. So this awards happen in March, and generally they want by June 16th. When I say they, LTAC runs this program, they want it bid ready by June 16th. And so that may mean that you advance designs beforehand. 90 days to get something bid ready is pretty quick, especially if you're starting from scratch. And then Idaho Parks and Rec, Don?
Yeah, so there's several funding categories they have underneath this one. They typically, a project that we've been coached on as a $50,000 project is a good size. They have bigger ones and smaller ones, but that's kind of a pretty good fundable size we've been told, and the ones that we've gotten funded have been around that range. It's important, like for recreational trails, it's important that your project, your path, be in a plan. That could be your comprehensive plan, a transportation plan, some kind of documented plan out there that you can reference in the application. The project needs to meet their goals, which includes like access, experience, and stewardship for those. So keep that in mind. And they do seem to like phased projects. And sometimes you have a large project you want to get done, but you're going to have to phase it over multiple years, and that seems to work out well. Another key to this is to reach out to their advisory committee and bring them on site and have a tour and get their buy-in, and they're the folks that'll be reviewing the application, so that's important. And then also you need a letter of obligation from your local agency, the city, your county, your highway district, whoever it is.
Now we don't want to bore you with all the little facts about each one of these programs. That's not what this presentation is about today. It's about what we've seen that has been successful in winning grant applications. And so now we're teaching we're sharing all of our secrets to everybody in this. So everybody's applications are going to be maybe better. And that means that yours will even have to be better, because everybody's hearing the same presentation, or more better, I guess I should say. There's also other programs that we list in ITD, and and there's also other stuff. When we helped Friends of River Trail, this was 20 years ago, and it was for congestion mitigation that we were able to help them get funding that started the Friends of Weezer River Trail. So there's unique project funding that you can apply to walk and pedestrian facilities.
Yeah, just remember, sometimes it takes multiple applications to be successful, and so don't give up if you're not successful the first time. A lot of times it might take a second time. You learn what they didn't like or what you need to improve on or whatnot, and eventually you'll usually get a successful grant.
And so as you look at these, we're starting right around now. We're already helping communities prepare their applications. They've already identified projects, or they'll have several projects, and we will go through each one of those projects. We'll compare it to what the ranking criteria is and start to sift that out, what we think is a score the highest for the community and to meet their goals. Some of these deadlines, they'll rapidly approach. So you got a couple mid-December, right before Christmas. That's for the TAP and for the CPS. Idaho Parks is in January. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that one being in January. And then others is just got to pay attention to those dates. Like Don mentioned, several of these require government or commissioner or county votes or affidavit. Don, what is that called?
Resolutions. Yeah.
And so now you're getting it on the agenda. Now you're a month beforehand of trying to make sure you have those. Several of these require commitment letters or letters of support community. So you really have to start on these about 2 months before to have a successful application. And we're going to talk about what we think is a successful application as we move on.
Yep. So back to the TAP application. As we put together applications, we always look at and suggest you see what the points, where you get your most points and how you'll rate the highest. And so, not to read through these or go through these by any means, but obviously you see the project descriptions, a lot of points, the planning and readiness, mobility, safety, economic opportunity, and so forth. So I think we always try to provide information in all the categories, obviously, but we focus on the ones that are going to get us the most points and get our application ranked the highest.
And like most applications, they'll have a paragraph where you type in a PDF form and you're describing what your project description is. Okay, and you're doing this in Word. I mean, everybody will follow this exact same criteria.
Yeah, and so we always have that saying, I think it's from the 7 habits, right? Begin with the end in mind. So this is the end. This is how you get scored and rated. So begin with this in mind. The one thing I would say that's a little different is on the first one there for 5 points for a map. Yeah, you only get 5 points, but we really feel out of these, I think this is the 100-point one. Yeah, that there's probably about 60 points that relate to the map, and it provides so much more information than just the map for 5 points. It supports all of the other ones like the mobility, safety, economic opportunity, and accessibility. And so then go to the next slide, we'll kind of show how that works out there. So here was just a TAP grant from a few years ago called the Walk Safe, Cross Safe project. It was a couple of those RRFBs and some sidewalk connectivity and infills. And so you're only getting 5 points for the map, but if you look at the top left, that safety is 15 points. We also talk about safety and accessibility. There's 15 points each. On the lower left is economic opportunity. And then mobility is 15 points, and accessibility down there is even more points. So the point being that in our map, we support our other criteria to support that. And so I think that's just so valuable to have a good map that shows the project, that gives explanations of things. We also often include pictures of the project just so people can have a better idea. We've talked to people that have reviewed and rated these, they get dozens of these and more, and they just really want to be able to open it up and have it be easily understood very quickly. And they have limited time in reviewing and ranking these, and they don't want to be searching for things. So we just make everything easy to find. And again, the old saying, "The picture's worth 1,000 words," is, I think, really applies to these applications.
So let me just add on. So this year we've changed a little bit of what we did in past. So right now you can see where we've written in red safety and number of points. But what we've changed on this now is we're calling out their criteria. So we're not going to say 15-point safety. We're just going to say safety. So when they know that, that's the buzzword for the score. You know what else we all like? We all like catchy names. So this is walk safe, cross safe. So stuff like this, it's something to give enthusiasm to the reader that this is a good project sport. It hits all of the key points. And as you look at the rest of the criteria, everybody will get the remaining 40%. You're on par with everybody on that 40%. It's these 60 points is where you design you win your criteria or win your grant. Should we move on to the next one, Don, or do you want to tack on?
Oh, I think that's good. We can move on.
Okay. So as we go to the children pedestrian safety, CPS, similar to the TAP, it has a criteria, but this one's a little bit unique. So first of all, I'm just going to start at the very bottom. Support. Everybody gets community support. Okay. How many of you are sending out a form letter to the community to give you support? Don't do that. That's average ranking. Form letters, are 4 to 7. Okay. Unique, diverse, excellent letters of support. So what are your opportunities for letters of support? Well, you got the schools. We all do that, right? We got City Hall. We got the county. We got maybe the mayor. We got maybe it's the any downtown associations, business associations, fire, police. Well, there's some other stuff. HOAs that they abut to. Okay. Now, HOAs are a little bit unique, and I'm going to say this from an HOA perspective. So I was the president of my HOA of 300 homes for about 10 years. We had money because we followed a pretty big budget. My community just put in speed humps throughout our entire subdivision at our own cost. So we had money. So that's another place where you get not only leverage their support, but ask them for a donation to the project to help support it. Even if it's not adjacent to them, but it's within a quarter mile, because who walks 5.5 miles a day? Well, I almost do. I'm almost there. Okay, so that's just one observation. Now, right-of-ways and easements. Bottom line is everybody's going to have right-of-ways and easements for this grant, because you can't win it if you don't. You're not going to be successful to show that it's ready. And so there's really no distinguishing parts here, but you got to clearly show it, call it on the map, all right-of-way obtained within city easements, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so everybody's going to get the 10 points. The support, some people will get 4 to 7, some will get 8 to 10. Try to get the 8 to 10 by being unique on those letters. Now you look at the remaining 60 points. It's children, safety, and mobility. And we always go to the very top of each list to get you the highest ranking. So for children, hey, does it primarily impact children? So what does that mean? You got a nursery, elementary school, or a park. Okay, those are probably the 3 that primarily hit children. Okay, safety. You have to have hard numbers on safety. So if you have crash reports, LTAC has all those. If you have first-hand reports, photos of accident scenes, or skid marks of where you're seeing near misses. Okay. If you have letters from homeowners sending into or testimony given at a city council meeting, you can take that, get their names, and tell them to write about their safety issues, okay, that they've seen. Okay, those are the stuff that you're trying to pick off, because we don't really care about scores 18 to 15 or 10 to 15, because we want a winning application. So we want to stay all on these or all on the A. And then you go to mobility. Okay, is it connecting existing systems? So if you have one sidewalk here, some infill, hey, that's connected mobility. But what is it connecting to? So just because you're connecting sidewalks doesn't mean it's a good project. But if you're connecting a community center to the park, hey, that's a really good project. Okay, so those are the criteria we go through, and we'll vet with agencies first or applicants. Hey, what are these, and how do we score each one of these? So I'm sure that everybody else on this that's done these has gone the same way. This is just our perspective of how to achieve it. So just share another case study. So this was City of Emmett, safe routes to school. What's interesting, back a long time ago, I designed about 500 residential subdivisions back in the early 2000s over here. Keller Associates, we did the site design for the school back in the early 2000s. And we just put a pipeline down this roadway. And as I'm thinking about this, and then we put in this application for the safe routes to school 12th Street for the city, heck, we should have put this application in when we did the pipeline, because half of it was already constructed during the pipeline. And we could have leveraged those funds from the water and sewer to show that we're doing it on this project. So just some big picture of what other projects you have and how did that apply to your projects. So talk to your water and sewer departments, talk to your streets departments, and figure out what improvements are scheduled, and that leverage those funds. So this particular application, we did the exact same thing. We got a great letter of support from the principal. The mobility, how it connected the main community. There's a bunch of farm fields between the area of the school over here versus the area over here. And so this was a major route for kids. Kids were walking right along the sidewalk. More mobility, more safety, and you can see in some of these photos what these kids are walking on. I don't even think there's a 2 foot, well, maybe a 1 foot asphalt shoulder and maybe a 2 foot gravel shoulder that was there. Okay, so these are, and how do we do this again? This was by a letter, by a map that we're bringing out all these items. Okay, Don?
Yeah, for the Idaho Parks and Rec grant, they have a criteria that you see before you with credibility, assessment of need, and scope of work, commitment, feasibility, and so forth. So again, as we put together the application for these folks, we keep that all in mind, and these individual ones are broken down into smaller or more descriptive
Criteria.
Explanations of what goes into there. And so I think maybe we just go to the map, and I can kind of talk through what some of those are. So this is another project in Glen Ferry. It's the Heritage Project. It's an overall vision of how to connect the Idaho State Park, the Three Island State Park, to downtown Glen Ferry, then also out to the city park where there's a pool and other amenities out there. So with
one note though, this was an application to Idaho State Parks. And so we might have an advantage on this because there's a state park there, and they probably have a desire to get bikers away from the state park and into the community, provide a better experience for the recreationals. Right,
and so one of their criteria is credibility, and the funding is a full range of users. It's cyclists, it's bikers, and it's connectivity of the park to, like I said, the downtown and to the city park. Assessment of need. If you can see the UP railroad tracks right now, it's a pretty regular basis that you'll see pedestrians walking across the railroad tracks. And as we all know, this is a main line and it's staying busy and they travel pretty fast and it's pretty scary. So that was part of the health and safety urgency. Does it create new recreational opportunities not available? Well, sure. Right now, you just can't make this connection, and it's going to be very important to make that. So we drew that out. Also, if we worked with the Parks and Rec staff, yeah, we met with the advisory committee folks. They came down, took a tour, showed them around. They liked the project. I think that helped it be successful. And then commitment of maintenance. The city had already built part of this path, and as part of that agreement is they've got a maintenance agreement that they'll continue to do that, and they would for this also. And then we had to demonstrate also the matching funds, how that's going to be accomplished, and a lot of that was with some private donations and local support in addition to some of the city money. And then also they want to see a good user cost. Last thing that anybody wants to do is to fund a project and then get out there and find out that it wasn't costed correctly and you can't make it all the way, or you've got to change it or something. And that's even becoming tougher these days with the way of supply, limited supply chain things and materials costs going up, or some things you can't get. So I'm a little more nervous now than we were in the past, but we do our best to accurately cost this out and estimate that. And again, this is also a phased project. We're only going to be able to complete the piece from the 3 Island Crossing State Park to the winery and some things. And so this could be maybe a 3 or 4 phase project before we get to see it all. But over time, when local leaders have given us a challenge to do something like this, it's amazing how over the years, if you stay with it and have a plan, you eventually get there. And so we're going to do that with this one also, I believe, and we can for a lot of other projects. So it's very rewarding to start off with a vision and then eventually get to the end and be able to bike from the park, hit downtown and grab a bite to eat, and go out to the city park and go swimming or something like that. So
that's similar to the city of Boise with the Boise Greenbelt, Friends of Weezer River Trail, same type of long-term picture. Hey, Don, I noticed you have a catchy name, Heritage Pathway, another catchy name. Good job. What was the reason for that name?
Well, actually the local folks came up with that, and it's because the crossing under the railroad tracks, there used to be a walkway, bikeway, pathway underneath the railroad tracks, and then they took it out in the 80s. And so there's school children that have to get across the tracks to get to the school. School's on the north side of the railroad tracks. And like I said, there's multiple times where I've personally seen kids, just walk across the tracks because there's no way to get across there. So this would provide a safe connection under there. I think that was part of the Heritage Pathway project, was because there was a pathway, it got taken out, and it's part of the heritage of the community, and they want to see it reestablished and be safer for the community and folks like that. And I think these are just cool projects, kind of going back to the Boise Greenbelt project. We got an award for it through ACEC, and American Society of Civil Engineers also, but in putting together that presentation, it was interesting to look back on the history of the Boise River. And at one time, it was a dirty river. There was slaughterhouses on the banks. There were dumps that you just dumped into the river. But it was a really cool association between, as the bike path got established, then there was more attention focused on the river. And then the river, like, oh, that's kind of dirty, we need to clean it up. As the river got more clean, there's more desire to build more pathways. And holy cow, look at what a great asset that is for the whole community today. And so it's just a neat synergy between pathways, bikeways, waterways, and it's just better for everybody, the environment and users alike. So it's pretty cool.
Don, on this map, lessons learned, you were successful on the win, but the lessons learned is you notice that we're not calling out what we showed on the other examples. We're not calling out the scoring criteria. We were successful, but as we apply for the next phases, that's the improvements that we need to make. And this was 2 applications to get funding, correct, Don?
It did take two times, because the first time, we were not successful. We were able to get the scores, and talk with staff and craft it in a little different way and show things a little better, and then they were successful.
So,
And then hopefully there'll be more successes coming forth.
so with that, you know, we have an engineer with our office. She does a lot of these applications. Her name's Kelsey. She's right now, she's in the middle of 2 or 3 of these for Dawn, all pathways, and several others throughout the company. She's really very good. If you want any information or any assistance, she's willing to help out any way she can. But I want to hear from the folks that are online. What do you think about this approach and how we attach with a map? What other items have you done that have led to successful applications that you think is unique? Maybe some trade secrets you want to share.
Thanks, Nathan. And while people think about that, and if folks want to answer that question, they can just hop off of mute and do so that way. Are we able to share your guys' slides in that PDF version with folks on this call? Because I'm seeing a lot of very helpful comments from this presentation. So thank you so much.
Yep, absolutely.
Cynthia, in response to your question, wrote that maps are really critical to getting a higher score for your project. Be sure to stay north, south, east, west versus left, then right. When unfamiliar with the community, left or right turns are meaningless. Also, photos of people and kids trying to use the current infrastructure and how it's not working, plus bike ped counts are great additions.
Yep, that's a great comment. The photos of the failures of the existing system. That's a great comment.
We have a couple questions in here. There's one that I want to get to because we are close to getting into the lunchtime. And it was, there's a few questions in this. So who funds local ped and bike plans? I have seen relatively recent LTAC funded local transportation plans that didn't really address ped bike needs. Would LTAC fund plan amendments to add in bike and ped needs analysis and project list? Do you want to start with that question? There's a couple after that.
So really that's where you're going. It goes to the funding for those is really in your transportation plan, and having that as a criteria. At Keller, we typically will go in and we specifically put in walks and trails. We want to make that a priority. Recently, we just did one for Blackfoot that was just adopted this last July or August. And Blackfoot's a unique community because it has the lake that's right there, that's right next to the interstate. They have a nice trail system, but really it only serves the very northeast or northwest of the community. Our recommendation was to establish now in your planning documents, hey, where's your loop for the pedestrian pathways that are in the county, that are in subdivision areas that you know are going to subdivide in the next 40 years. And you start to preserve those loops now, just like you would for major roadway corridors. You do the exact same thing for the pathway system. And you have to get that into your transportation, pounded into their heads. And the engineers, it's not all roads. You got to preserve right of way for the roads and designate those corridors that will allow the sidewalks. But these pathways you got to identify as well and make sure that's in your park plan or your pathway plan. And a lot of the scoring criteria, both on the TAP and on the children pedestrian safety, is it has to be in a plan. And it's really not that hard to implement those improvements or into the plans that are already out there.
That's great. The second question is, how difficult was it to work with the railroad to get the boardwalk under the railroad tracks?
We haven't gotten, so for the Heritage Project, we have not secured the easement from the railroad yet. We are working on them, and they are a tough nut to crack. But it's interesting that one of their responses, like, well, we don't want to give you this easement because it's not safe. Well, our response is, what, it's safe for kids to cross open tracks? That's this. I mean, what's the least, what's lesser, what's more safe or not safe? I mean, to me, it's better to get them under the tracks in a walk, kind of a walk path underneath there. So it's kind of, we were trying to use their own logic against them. You know, I think I'd rather walk next to a creek than walk across some tracks.
So what about the Sugar City pathway, Don? How did you obtain that?
So that one, it was a little bit easier because it was not with Union Pacific Railroad. It was with the Eastern Idaho Railroad, which is Watco. And
Watco also operates this one in the Treasure Valley, correct?
Right. Yeah. Boise Valley.
Same entity.
Yeah. Yeah. That one, I think the success there was we were able to work with locals, and we were able to kind of horse trade. So there were some existing permitted crossings that the railroad wanted to close, and so that was the trade-off. If you give us this easement, we've talked to these property owners and stuff, and we can close these other crossings. And so they were able to close a number of crossings, and they thought that was a safer outcome to do those crossing closures and then grant this pathway. And we do have a fence between the railroad and the pathway to keep it somewhat safe and things. So yeah, so I think, you know, we work with the railroad. They want to know what it is for them, what's in it for them, but they also want to be good neighbors. They want to be good folks of the community also. But they're a big bureaucracy, and it's challenging sometimes. So I think being persistent and consistent is important with them.
Yeah.
And they've had a lot of change in staff in the last few years, so it's somewhat disappointing. Or you've got these relationships set up, then all of a sudden they're not there, and you got new people, and it's been challenging. So.
All right, and then there's one more question at this moment. It is, can you address how project designs like the ones in Glen Ferry are reviewed for ADA compliance by LTAC, ITD, or the Federal Highway Administration? The push buttons that were constructed with those RRFBs are not accessible to a person in a wheelchair.
Yeah, that's from Donna, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that was that the TAP grant wouldn't allow or to get additional right-of-way, and we didn't have much to work within right-of-way there, and so those RRFBs had to go back behind the sidewalk, and there wasn't much room for that. So that's, you know, could it have been better if we had got right-of-way? Sure, but the thought was to at least get these in and get them a safer crossing. And we acknowledge that there could be some folks with disabilities. I think currently there weren't anybody at the school at that time, so that made the decision to at least get something better than what was there.
And that goes back to our main point. You have to have your right-of-way established before you go into these, and if you don't, then you'll end up with limitations on what you can and cannot do.
Yeah. I am not seeing any more questions. Cynthia just added to the chat that TAP and child pet safety applications are currently up on the LTAC website, as well as the link to that. So if anyone's interested in checking that out, they can do so.
Yeah, and they have an extensive training that goes through every single application stuff. And we didn't want to focus on their training. We want to see, you know, what is a good way of scoring high. Absolutely.
Yeah, but we appreciate it. This was a really great conversation and presentation. Folks can get Kelsey's email down, and then we also have Dawn and Nathan's email up on our website, and we will make sure that the presentation gets sent to folks who are interested. And so thank you so much, guys. With that, I believe we are heading into lunch about 5 minutes early, so you get an extra 5 minutes on lunch. And once we get back, we will hear from our second featured speaker, Leah from Vision Zero.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.